something like this, and like a domestic abuse case, they're not calling at 12 in the afternoon. It's like 2 in the morning, and these people are working tirelessly to help them. And I have never been more proud of something as walking into a shelter and seeing not just the people that they're helping, but the people that are helping these people. Do you know what I mean? They're so prideful and they take so much pride in what they're doing.
I think what you're doing is incredible. I'm so impressed by you. I was watching you on your book tour. You have a children's book
On June 27, 2025, the world stopped to watch as Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez sealed their love in one of the most extravagant weddings Venice had ever seen. The ceremony on the island of San Giorgio. Maggiore shimmered like a scene from a film, with the Gothic skyline of Venice as the backdrop and the Adriatic breeze carrying whispers of both admiration and outrage. 200 of the most powerful figures on the planet gathered for 3 days of celebration, their combined net worth estimated at more than $400 billion. Bill Gates, Leonardo DiCaprio, Oprah Winfrey, Kim Kardashian, Prince Hussein of Jordan, and countless others walked the red carpet that stretched across ancient Venetian stones. Yet as the guests marveled at the spectacle, activists draped protest banners across bridges and towers, declaring, if you can rent Venice for your wedding, you can pay more tax for locals. The lavish ceremony symbolized the widening gap between billionaires and the world around them. For Bezos, however, it marked a personal rebirth. He had once been known for frugality, for precision, for a life revolving around technology. But now, with Lauren by his side, every decision seemed driven by romance, extravagance, and spectacle. Lauren walked the aisle in a custom Dolce & Gabbana gown, hand-embroidered by 12 artisans over 8 months. Her high collar and lace pattern evoked the elegance of Sophia Loren and the golden age of Italian cinema. She told Vogue that after flying into space in April, she could never again wear something ordinary. Her life had changed, and she wanted her wedding dress to reflect that. Bezos stood waiting in a tailored Brioni tuxedo, his eyes fixed on her with a devotion that startled even those who had known him for decades. When they exchanged vows, Lauren officially became Lauren Sanchez Bezos, posting to Instagram with a single pink heart and the date June 27, 2025. It was a union not just of two people, but of wealth, power, media, and space exploration. Their honeymoon began, not in secrecy, but on the Kourou, their $500 million yacht that cut across the Mediterranean like a floating kingdom. The ship, with its wooden figurine resembling Lauren at the bow, became a moving symbol of their union inside the yacht. Lauren's favorite flowers filled each cabin, chefs prepared her chosen menus, and a private orchestra rehearsed for evening concerts. The cost of maintaining this vessel, nearly $3 million a month, now seemed trivial compared to the statement it made. This was not Jeff Bezos the technocrat. This was Bezos the monarch of the sea, and Lauren the queen who had inspired him to rule differently. But even amid the opulence, there were whispers. The wedding had been delayed for months, not because of indecision, but because of lawyers after a divorce that cost him $38 billion. Bezos swore never to risk another fortune without protection. The prenuptial agreement, crafted by the most expensive legal teams in the world, stretched hundreds of pages. Insiders said it guaranteed Lauren wealth, security, and status, while preserving the core of his empire. The irony was not lost on observers. A man who once built Amazon penny by penny was now signing documents that valued his love in billions of dollars. Still, Jeff insisted to friends that what he gained with Lauren could not be measured in money. And as the Kourou glided along the Italian coast, he told reporters that this was the happiest chapter of his life. But happiness came at a price. In the 20 months leading up to the wedding, Bezos sold more than $12 billion in Amazon stock, fueling his new lifestyle and financing Lauren's world of media philanthropy. And fashion analysts noted the volatility in Amazon's value and pointed to his divided focus. Andy Jassy, the current CEO, guided the company steadily, but investors could not help but notice that Bezos, once obsessed with technical details, now seemed more fascinated by red carpets. Blue Origin too shifted its emphasis. The company, once laser-focused on beating SpaceX at technical milestones, began investing in publicity and space tourism campaigns designed to capture imagination. Lauren's fingerprints were everywhere. Her background in media helped package space exploration as not only a scientific pursuit, but a story, a brand, a spectacle. Even charity reflected her touch. The Lauren Sanchez Charitable Foundation, launched with $2 billion from Jeff, now funded schools in Africa, supported women entrepreneurs, and posted glossy updates on Instagram. Lauren herself appeared in photos at construction sites in rural villages wearing white shirts and wide smiles. Her transformation, from television host to billionaire philanthropist, seemed complete. And yet to some insiders it raised a question. Was Bezos still steering his empire? Or had Lauren become the hidden pilot? Psychologists noted that Lauren knew how to shape perception. She surrounded Jeff with constant admiration, gave him space to feel like the hero while ensuring her own role as muse guide and partner. She made him feel as though every gift, every island, every necklace, every yacht was his idea. But those close to the couple suggested her influence ran deeper, that she had tapped into the loneliness of the world's richest man and given him not just love, but the story of being reborn. And Jeff embraced it fully, because for him, what good is power without someone to share the stage? This shift became clear when Jeff, once the invisible CEO, became a fixture at Met Gala at Cannes. At exclusive parties, he posed for photographers with Lauren on his arm, their wardrobe chosen by a stylist paid $2 million a year. Every detail curated to signal their dominance, not just in business, but in culture. Their presence on magazine covers, their feature spreads in Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and Vanity Fair, created an image of Bezos not as the awkward technologist, but as a man who had conquered both earth and love. But as with all great spectacles, cracks appeared beneath the surface. Former executives at Amazon whispered about a leader distracted about a corporate culture, losing its sharpness about innovation, slowing some worried that Jeff had traded focus for fantasy. Even his brother Mark confessed in an interview that Jeff now lived in a world he no longer understood. Friendships with old allies like Bill Gates cooled his ex-wife Mackenzie Scott, poured herself into philanthropy, donating billions, while quietly expressing concern about the man she once knew. Even his children appeared sparingly at events, their bond with their father complicated by his public transformation. Yet Jeff pressed forward unfazed, telling friends that reinvention was his right, that he had earned not just wealth, but the freedom to live as he pleased, and Lauren fueled that conviction, promising him not only love but legacy together. They spoke of a future beyond Earth. Blue Origin insiders whispered about plans for a lunar colony by 2035, a private base where Jeff and Lauren could host tourists and pioneers, a home among the stars designed not only for science, but for comfort gardens, theaters, and suites that would carry their names in history. This dream blurred the line between ambition and romance, between exploration and escapism, as if Jeff wanted to etch their love not just into Earth, but into the very moon itself. But even as Jeff dreamed of lunar colonies and a life beyond Earth, the weight of reality pressed on. Financial experts calculated that between yachts, islands, jewelry mansions, jets, and foundations, he had already spent more than $1.5 billion on Lauren and their shared lifestyle in just 3 years. And if missed opportunities, changes in Amazon's strategy, and Blue Origin delays were considered, the real cost could reach $2.5 billion. Numbers that once would have horrified the practical, frugal founder now rolled off his back as if love had rewritten the mathematics of his life. Critics asked whether this was devotion or obsession, whether the man who once disrupted retail and space exploration was now disrupting himself. The champagne incident with William Shatner years earlier had already raised eyebrows when Jeff celebrated with bubbly, while the 90-year-old actor stood tearful and shaken. It was a moment many said revealed how show had overtaken soul. Now those whispers echoed louder. Was Bezos becoming a symbol of excess, blind to the optics of a world struggling with inequality? Or was he simply living a second youth, one that billions could only imagine? And Lauren amplified this duality. Her Instagram, with 500,000 followers, turned their daily life into a glossy diary. Photos of charity visits, photos of yacht sunsets, photos of designer gowns, each post collecting hundreds of thousands of likes, each post reinforcing the brand of Bezos and Sanchez. Together, their media studio in Los Angeles churned out projects, documentaries about women in space, about technology, about dreams of the future. But to skeptics, it seemed like every initiative was less about science and more about image. Still, Jeff appeared radiant. He told confidants that at 61 he felt younger than ever. He called this his emotional renaissance. Psychologists noted that such transformations were not uncommon. Second, loves in adulthood often ignite dramatic change, but in Jeff's case, the scale was global. His choices rippled across markets, philanthropy, and technology alike. Amazon employees whispered that Andy Jassy carried the weight, while Jeff lived a parallel. Life Blue Origin engineers grumbled that focus had shifted from rocket engines to press releases, yet others argued that Jeff's new perspective could inspire a broader audience, could make space relatable not just for scientists but for dreamers and children. And perhaps that was Lauren's greatest influence. She made Jeff not just a technologist, but a storyteller. And in the story, she cast herself as both muse and partner. Their foundation poured millions into STEM education for girls. Their wedding donations funded lagoon research in Venice. Their fashion choices spotlighted sustainable designers. It was a paradox. They embodied extravagance, yet sometimes remembered responsibility still. The question lingered: how much was real? And how much was performance? Even his family struggled to answer. His eldest son, Preston, began appearing more often, but still cautiously. His ex-wife kept her distance. His brother admitted they no longer connected, as before Jeff was now living in a narrative few could enter. Insiders called it the Lauren effect, an enchantment that reshaped the richest man on earth into someone unrecognizable. And yet to Jeff it was freedom. Freedom from the rigid identity of Amazon CEO. Freedom to become a man of spectacle, of romance, of generosity. And as the Koru sailed into the sunset after the wedding, he whispered to a friend on board that for the first time he felt alive. What came next could redefine not just his life, but the frontier of human ambition, because in the blueprints of Blue Origin, insiders found sketches of lunar villas, gardens with glass domes, theaters carved into regolith resorts for 50 guests at a time, a space colony not for scientists alone, but for billionaires, dreamers, and lovers, a colony where one day the names Bezos and Sanchez would be etched not only in history books, but on the very surface of the moon. Some saw madness, others saw vision. And Jeff insisted that when he and Lauren walked hand in hand beneath an artificial sky on the lunar surface, it would be the ultimate proof that love can conquer not only Earth, but the universe itself. Yet as dazzling as that dream sounded, financial analysts kept warning Amazon shares slipping, Blue Origin lagging, SpaceX Jeff burning through billions faster than he could replenish, investors, cautious, regulators, watchful. But none of it seemed to matter to him. He smiled at galas, kissed Lauren at fashion shows, posed for covers, declared that love was his best invention of all. And behind the gloss, one truth stood tall. The era of the old Bezos, the cold technocrat, the invisible genius was over. In his place stood a new man, public, emotional, lavish, and above all, devoted to the woman who had transformed him forever. And so the story of Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez. Bezos became more than romance. It became a parable of wealth, power, reinvention, and desire. A tale that forced the world to ask how much love is worth and whether the richest man alive had finally found the one treasure money could not measure, as days turned into months. After the Venice wedding, Jeff and Lauren settled into a rhythm that was anything but ordinary. Their home base rotated between the Beverly Hills mansion worth $165 million, the island villa in the Caribbean, the Koru yacht, and the Gulfstream jet that stitched their worlds together. Every appearance carefully curated, every journey. A headline, every photograph, a statement of power. Yet for all the gloss, insiders whispered that Jeff had entered a point of no return because the lifestyle was not just expensive, it was transformative. When he stepped into Amazon headquarters, he no longer carried the same aura of focus employees, who once described him as obsessive about every detail. Now described a man who seemed like a guest, a man distracted by the next gala, the next trip, the next project for Lauren. One could argue this was the plan not out of malice, but out of instinct. She had always been a media figure. She knew how to turn attention into currency, and she applied that instinct to Jeff, amplifying his image, reshaping his narrative, weaving their love into the mythology of modern billionaires. The gifts he poured onto her, from jewelry to art collections to islands, were more than gestures. They were symbols staged for the world to see, each one sparking coverage, each one solidifying her place not only as his wife, but as a global icon. And with each move, Jeff seemed less like the reserved CEO and more like a character in a story he could not stop telling. But beneath the spectacle, numbers began to shift. Jeff sold $12 billion in stock, not as a business strategy, but as a lifeline to finance his transformation. Amazon analysts grew uneasy. Top executives left Blue Origin, lagged behind SpaceX, and yet none of it stopped Jeff, because in his mind, this was not a decline. This was evolution. He told confidants that one day people would look back and see this, not as indulgence, but as preparation. that Blue Origin was not just building rockets, it was building a new life. And Lauren was the bridge between the old world and the new. It was she who convinced him to turn philanthropy into performance. She, who helped him stand on stage as not just a businessman, but as a figure of culture. She who turned charity projects into photo spreads in Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. And for Jeff, it worked. He felt admired, renewed, adored, even as friends drifted away. Even as his brother admitted he no longer understood him, Jeff doubled down on the idea that love was worth more than legacy. That building a life with Lauren mattered more than maintaining the old identity of the Amazon founder. And perhaps that was the most shocking truth of all. Not the billions spent. Not the yachts or the gowns or the mansions, but the realization that the richest man on earth was willing to risk his empire for emotion, because what he craved most was not another company or another conquest, but connection. The question that haunted those watching was simple. Had Lauren saved Jeff from the prison of his old self? Or had she rewritten him into someone unrecognizable? A man who now measured success not in profits, but in moments, a man who sought not quarterly gains, but eternal memory etched into history books and even into the moon itself. As the glow of Venice slowly faded, the world began to take a harder look at the man who had once been seen as the relentless builder of Amazon, and now appeared as a monarch of spectacle headlines turned sharper. The tone of profiles shifted from admiration to suspicion. Was this still the genius strategist who reinvented retail? Or had he become a billionaire lost in performance art? And yet Jeff himself leaned into the narrative. He appeared at the Met Gala with Lauren, their matching ensembles. Dissected by fashion critics, he hosted dinners with heads of state on the Kourou yacht, transforming it into a floating stage of diplomacy and excess. He donated millions to climate initiatives, but every donation came with photo ops magazine covers and red carpet statements. Skeptics called it vanity philanthropy. Yet Jeff believed visibility was impact, that if people saw him care, they too might care. But behind the curtain, Amazon showed cracks. Warehouses strained profits, thinned investors, whispered, and SpaceX widened its lead in the race to space. Jeff would not admit it publicly, but those close to him said the pressure ate at him, that the man who once demanded flawless execution now wrestled with the gnawing fear of falling behind. And Lauren's role grew heavier. She became not only wife, but shield strategist and co-star. She turned scandals into stories she reframed, criticisms into love letters. She made every diamond, every gown, every yacht, dinner part of a larger tale. That Jeff was no longer just a CEO. He was a global symbol of reinvention, but with every reinvention came resistance. Activists mocked the billions spent while employees struggled. Unions rose up, questioning why their founder lived like royalty. While workers sweated in warehouses, politicians sharpened their rhetoric against him, turning his wealth into a political weapon. And yet Jeff pressed forward. He began speaking not just about profits, but about destiny, about humanity's future. On the moon, about building colonies that could house millions of visions so vast that it sounded almost like myth. And it was Lauren who amplified it with her gift for media. She pushed the narrative that theirs was not just a marriage, it was a mission. That together they would not only reshape culture but expand civilization itself. The backlash grew louder, but so did the intrigue. Because in every great story, the audience wonders, will the hero rise or will he fall? And Jeff stood suspended between both fates, a man adored and ridiculed, feared and envied, celebrated and doubted, a man who traded certainty for spectacle and control for connection. And the world watched, waiting to see if his billions would carry him to the stars or bury him beneath the weight of his own creation. And so the man who once measured life in quarterly earnings now measured it in symbols, in whispers, in the gaze of a world that never looked away. The wedding in Venice was no longer just a wedding. It was a coronation, a rebirth staged under Gothic arches and gilded ceilings. The Kourou yacht was no longer just a ship. It was a floating kingdom carrying love, ambition, and contradiction across oceans, and every diamond on Lauren's hand became not only a jewel, but a statement of permanence, a signal to the world that their union was built to endure. Yet beneath the glitter lay the eternal tension between what he built and what he sought to become. Amazon still churned profits but was no longer his identity. Blue Origin still pursued the moon, but was not yet his triumph. Governments courted his influence but questioned his reach, and through it all, Jeff stood at a crossroads of myth and man. The myth said he was invincible, a titan who could rewrite destiny. The man knew he was fragile, a lover who had gambled reputation, fortune, and power on the belief that intimacy could survive exposure and scrutiny. The question that lingered was simple: had he won, or had he traded one form of empire for another? Because the warehouse floors still whispered his name, the rockets still carried his signature, and the world still tracked his every move. But the focus was no longer solely on invention, it was on image. And in that image, Lauren became both mirror and muse, shaping him in ways he never imagined. She gave him laughter in chaos. She gave him headlines in scandal. She gave him purpose when the engines of ambition sputtered. And as the lights of Venice dimmed into memory and the yacht drifted into horizon, Jeff Bezos faced the truth that no wealth, no ring, no kingdom of glass and steel could erase that the greatest gamble of his life was not Amazon, not Blue Origin, not the billions in stocks or the dream of lunar colonies, but love itself. And whether history would remember him as the man who conquered markets, or the man who risked everything for the fire of connection, would depend not on the rockets launched or fortunes counted, but on the silent spaces between scandal and spectacle, where love either endures or it does not. And in that silence, Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez walked hand in hand toward a future no balance sheet could measure.
This video covers legal allegations in a news context. All claims are from official filings and no guilt is implied until proven in court, please. Keep all discussions respectful. Allegations are not facts until proven in court.